Good morning, Timothy, and good morning to everybody listening to us in Clubhouse or watching us on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. It's a pleasure to have you with us again. And of course, it's a pleasure to have you with me, Timothy, this morning once again for the 217th episode of Japanese Politics One-on-One. So I'm not going to talk too much before I give you the screen. So it's a beautiful day here in Tokyo. I hope that where you are in Katsuyama, it's going to stay nice and dry, and also you can finish the briefing before it starts raining. Hopefully it will not start raining there at all. So Timothy, over to you.
Thank you very much, Maya, and good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in. Maya, if you can listen, you can hear the pitter-patter of rain just starting now.
So okay, I'm sorry for that.
It's hitting the bimini. I'm under a cover now. We structured the studio so that if it did start raining, it wasn't predicted to start raining until after the briefing. But since you started talking about it, then the gods got mad, and now it's raining.
Well,
but anyway, and yes, today is April 6th, 2025. The budget passed. The yen is standing, Maya, at 145.53. We have not seen that strength of the yen for quite a while. Maybe, 2022, it was hovering there. We hit it a couple of times in 23 and 24. The Japanese government intervened on it, but this is a real signal. The yen is a barometer of how things are going, and I'd like to get into that a little bit more later in the briefing. Trump on Wednesday announced a 25% tariff on Japanese automobiles and 24% overall. He also has imposed tariffs, the Liberation Day for the United States. Big fanfare in the Rose Garden of the White House. So a lot of trade allies of the United States and, basically globally is suffering from this kind of shock to the system. So we're going to have to work our way through that. I'm going to get into what Mr. Ishiba's plan is for that. He has been attempting to address it for the last 3 days. And we do have some news there and also some suggestions of what is going to pan out as a consequence of that. The budget passed Monday of this week, as we talked about last week, which was 7 days ago. The budget hadn't passed. The last day of the year was the 31st, which was Monday. It squeaked through. Finally, it passed the upper house. Then it had to go back down to the lower house because there were several amendments. The first time in post-war history where there were amendments to the budget that had to be approved once by the lower house, passed up. The upper house had some amendments to it. It had to go back down to the lower house, and that's what happened this last week. A very significant week in Japanese politics. The budget is at 115.2 trillion yen, which is the largest annual budget that the Japanese government has passed so far. South Korean President Yoon was impeached on, what was it, Friday? By a unanimous vote of the Constitutional Committee. And so 60 days, they have to go through a selection process. But this is a big shock to the system. Same thing happened, not quite the same thing, but the same thing happened in France. The same thing was going to happen in the United States. There's something of a tension going on geopolitically and also nationally in a lot of governments throughout the world. So it's a very delicate time in global politics. And let me see, with the budget passed, the prime minister now has to trudge through this long process between now and June 22nd. This diet session ends on June 22nd. It is also the day of the election for the Tokyo metropolitan government. And it also gives us, or constitutionally, it mandates the election of the half of the upper house. So that will happen. They'll call the election, probably campaigning beginning maybe 5 or probably not more than 10 days after the diet session ends. And then it's a 17-day election campaign before the before voting starts on a Sunday, probably the July 20th, I guess, but it's yet to be seen. So there's a lot going on there with the budget passed now. The gloves come off. There's a little bit more duking to be expected. The prime minister is kind of back on his heels, and he's got a lot of other things going on, not just the Trump tariffs and his handling of it, but also the release of the members of mostly the Abe faction, 11 of them, Diet members who have been refrained from participating in leadership positions for 1 year. That 1 year punishment ended on Thursday. And so now these potentially very powerful political leaders, almost all of them in the Abe faction, are now back on track to assume leadership positions within the factions, what's left of the factions, and within the Japanese government and the administration as well. So none of them really like the prime minister, so he's got a couple of headaches that he's juggling. Let me get back into those in a little bit more detail after a word from our sponsor, Maya.
Yeah, thank you very much, Timothy. And of course, it's time for a word for our sponsor. Actually, a big thank you to Kanchu, or as they are well known online as Kanchu.com. There, you can connect with James Howell. He's here on the slide. You can see his picture. If you're not following him on LinkedIn, please connect with him and do talk with him. If you have any projects in mind coming up your way in any of the fields here, buying and selling real estate in Yokohama, real estate investment, or property management, James will speak to you in English. You can talk with him or his colleagues in Japanese as well. So it is up to you if you are based in Yokohama or if you want to move to Yokohama. Please think about James and Kanchu. Look them up online at kanchu.com and talk with them. So Timothy, now we are back to to the body of the briefing, I believe. And I hope that you don't melt away, because I can hear the rain. Yes, the patter of the rain on above you. So hopefully you will be still there even at the end of this briefing.
So I'm locked in place in the cockpit of the good ship Grimm's, and I'm reporting from Katsuyama as usual. And once again, thank you very much for joining us, everybody. The yen once again closed at 145.3 to the dollar. It hasn't been this strong for quite a while, and it's not been since 2023. Since then it's been hovering at 150, almost 160. It's hit 160 a couple of times, and it really causes the Japanese government to go through a rethink, because it impacts trade, impacts investment, and it impacts exports, that sort of thing. So there's this huge tension, as you know, with the stronger yen. The stronger yen allows Japan to purchase more imports, and imports to production, and enhances tourism. It enhances trade. Tourism and trade suffer. But with a weak yen, exports surge because there's more money that's generated as a consequence of that. It hits negatively the cost of living, and but company profits, companies who are dominated by export trade, which a large significant portion of Japanese companies are, especially the big ones, they surge in profits. So the strong yen weakened this tension that goes on, and it's very closely watched and managed by the Bank of Japan and the finance ministry. And you will remember that Donald Trump was talking about, countries are manipulating their currencies. He was really talking about Japan, I think, obliquely, not pointedly pointing them out. But everybody knows that Japan intervenes in the currency market, and significantly. And since it's going to be an issue coming up, and I suspect now that it's at 145, you might see a little bit of action or suggestion of action. Plus, the economy is really tanking. The inflation rate has increased. They just announced this month another 1,500 products that will increase in costs, consumer market. They don't have to get approval, but they have to announce it, and they have to somehow get some kind of acquiescence from the government to raise their prices. So that is going to impact the inflation rate as well. And the Japanese government is trying hard to stymie that. But you might remember last year in April of 29, April and May. So we're now in April. Last year at this time, the yen fell to $160.2 to the yen. And the Japanese government intervened twice in a matter of days, on April 29th and on May 2nd. And the first intervention was 9.79 trillion yen. And the second intervention was, let me see, what was that? No, the total of the two interventions was 9.79 trillion yen. To put that in context, the Japanese government just passed the most tremendous budget in post-war history at 115 trillion yen. The intervention this time last year was almost 10 trillion yen. So that's a huge amount of money. It did impact the yen. The yen improved about 7% over a brief period of time, but they'll take what they can get. But this is a lot of money. Also, in July of 2024, they came in again. The yen surged 3% in one day, and the Japanese government intervened. They came in at 3.5 trillion yen, and that's about 22 billion US dollars. And then earlier in October of 21 and September, so in very close proximity, the yen plunged 7 yen due to the intervention. It got stronger. They invested, let me see, about 9.19 trillion yen. Once again, about 9 trillion yen, when the entire budget this year that was just passed was 115. So that's a huge intervention, and I think that's what has the president of the United States so upset with the manipulation of the currency market so that products either seem cheaper or they're more expensive. And I think that underlies some of people are just shocked that the tariff was 25% on autos, Japan's major export to the United States, comprising almost 40% of the value of trade occurring between the two countries. And they expected it to be a little bit cheaper. So the likelihood of Japan amalgamating and nullifying some of these is very low. I think the United States is dealing with all countries. You saw that he came in with the EU, 20% on the EU, 34% tariffs on China. Vietnam got what, 18%? 46% for Vietnam. That's huge. South Korea, 25%. Taiwan, 32%. Taiwan just invested several $billion in the United States, hopefully in an effort to tap this down. I don't know if it quite worked that way, but I think there's a different strategy going on here. Thailand got 36% of a tariff. The Nikkei sank 2.7%, and the yen, as we've reported, improved about 1% as a consequence of all of this is going on. So there was an emergency meeting called by the prime minister on Friday. He actually invited all of the opposition parties, Komeito, Ishin, the Constitutional Democrat. He invited all of the leaders to come in and sit down with him. And they talked about what they're going to do. The prime minister said that, this is approaching a national emergency. And as a consequence, I'm asking all of you to come down and sit down with me. Let's talk about what our reaction is going to be and how we're going to handle it. He received kudos as a consequence of that, inviting the opposition in. I guess he should. He's in a minority government. He needs their involvement and their participation. And it did give them a time to air out some of their grievances and to complain and criticize. But he did get some attaboys from some of the opposition parties for actually including them and having a sit down with them. On the other hand, it did appear like he's struggling to figure out what in the hell he should be doing. Should I call the president of the United States? Should I go visit? What should I say to him? So it doesn't look altogether great. Mr. Motegi was identified by Donald Trump as a tough negotiator. He's somebody that he respected as a negotiator. And so, some of the voices are, recommending, why don't you appoint a minister level person in charge of dealing with the tariffs? And Mr. Motegi should be that guy because he's a tough negotiator. He knows Donald Trump. Mr. Ishiba, he basically had to admit, I don't know how to appeal to him. I don't have any really good skin with him. I've met him once, but this is a tough deal, and likely, even if I go and I talk with the president, he might give me a couple of points. He might shave off something, but this is too big. The GDP of Japan will suffer 0.7%. So it's not huge. It's not 1%. It's 70% of 1%. But at this particular point in time, the Japanese economy is really reeling, with the inflation, with the wages increasing, but the cost of living not keeping up with the number of advantages that the big company employees and some of the medium-sized employees are getting, even though the wages are increasing maybe 5-6% in some cases. That doesn't filter out to everybody. Everybody, the vast majority are small and medium companies, and they don't get to benefit from the wage increases that the big companies do. They follow that. They kind of are influenced by it. But suffering the decline in GDP. And then actually, we've talked about this before, Maya. You can see it on the streets. You can feel it. The number of foreigners and tourists visiting Japan has exploded. They're everywhere. But the lack of energy and motivation expressed throughout the economy, you can tell people are just very pensive. What does the tariffs, what do the tariffs mean for our particular company? Should we sign this contract? Should we move forward? It's a time of uncertainty, and as a consequence of that, the energy and the vibrancy of the Japanese economy has kind of taken a back seat. So people are in a very pensive mood, and I think it was appropriate for the prime minister to call everybody together. So they're kind of on an emergency standing. But this was called on Friday, and I think the prime minister is committed to telephoning Donald Trump, but that only goes so far. Many people are saying, "Why the hell aren't you going? You should have already been there. You should have already done something even before this came." This is surprising to us. We didn't think he would hit us that hard, but you need to be prepared for it, and you should have done something about it. So it's not just the prime minister; it's also the foreign ministry and the finance ministry that are taking some heat. Moving on to what's going on in South Korea, President Yoon Suk Yeol will be impeached. He is impeached now. That happened on, I think, Friday. The Constitutional Committee unanimously voted. So that's pretty hard. I mean, it's not even a competition. Unanimously approved him to be impeached for abuse of power, for constitutional violations. And so he will no longer be the prime minister. His second in command has taken over as acting prime minister. He is not universally liked. So within 60 days, they have to go through this process of selecting the new president of South Korea. It's a delicate time. As you might remember, President Yoon took over from a left-leaning president. And as a consequence of that, U.S. relations, U.S.-Japan, South Korea relations improved dramatically. We were reporting on this quite a bit. There was finally the three-way meeting. They had 2+2 meetings. The reaction to what was going on in North Korea and the firing of rockets and the nuclear tests and the hypersonic missile tests, that sort of thing, had at least a combined response, and people were working very closely together. It is possible for it to swing back to the left. President Yoon had a very, very short margin of becoming prime minister. And so as a consequence, he wasn't quite a lame duck as a president, but he didn't have all of the tools in his toolbox as he was president. So he had a lot of detractors. And the actions that he took 2 months ago, was as a consequence of the the left wing of South Korean politics coming up and really attacking him. It was a dangerous position for him, and he took a gamble that he didn't quite win. But like I said in the opening statement, this is occurring throughout the diplomatic and the democratic world. People who are in leadership positions are being attacked, and due diligence being run, and the evidence coming out of double dealing or suggested nefarious dealings. So it's a really tough time for global government, and there's a lot that's going to be going on in the next couple of weeks. This year is the 60th year of Japan-South Korea relations, so who knows what's going to happen there. Now with the budget passed, moving on back to the prime minister, with the budget passed, we move into a new phase. The Trump tariffs were a real shock, and probably that's the biggest news of this briefing here. But I think people already know about the tariffs and the impact, and it's in the news. But really, for the prime minister, this is a huge issue. He had issues before that. They haven't disappeared as a consequence of that, but they are all being overshadowed by the Trump tariffs. So let's see how he comes for that. And his call to the opposition party, I think, is rather significant. The return of the Abe faction leaders, there were 11 leaders who were criticized and punished. They were supposed to write an apology. They were supposed to say how much money they pocketed, how they spent that. And, it was far deeper and far nastier than the public was taught about. The public prosecutors, as you know, they didn't even go 24 months in digging back on how much money was generated. And if the individual received a certain amount of money beyond what they decided was really nasty, and I think it was about Nissan Mayan for the period, then they were criticized. And 11 of them fell into that category. Maybe 2 or 3 of them lost their diet seats as a consequence of that. And so of the 11, there are maybe 8 of them still left in the parliament, some in the upper house, some in the lower house, but some very powerful political figures. Mr. Seko in the upper house and Hagiuda in the lower house. Mr. Hagiuda was the LDP chairperson for the Tokyo election district. So for the LDP, he was the chairman of how to organize and manage the LDP members in the precincts, the several, maybe 24 precincts in Tokyo. And he's also from Tokyo. He was criticized. He was one of the 11. He took in far more than the amount that they would kind of cast a glance at. But he did win his re-election in October, and he's still very popular in Tokyo politics. It is amazing. But now he is back, and he can assume, as the other 8 can assume, leadership positions within the Diet, within the party, within the administration. So this is a big headache for the prime minister, because all of them blame Ishiba, Prime Minister Ishiba, for the problems that the Seiwakai suffered, and for the dissolution of all of the factions. There's only one formal faction, Mr. Aso's faction, but the rest of them remain. But Abe faction was 110 Diet members when this began to collapse. So many of them have fled. They've become independent. They're considering joining other political factions or just being independent members. But for those who are in the upper house, this is a tough deal, because they need to have faction support. They need to have political, party support. And if they were in the LDP, they probably still remain in the LDP, but are factionless. But there's a lot of horse trading that's going on now. A lot of people are seeing what happened with Mr. Tamaki and the Democratic Party for the People, and him going from 8 members to 28 members in the last election. And they're thinking, his policies and those of the Democratic Party for the People are not so dissimilar from the LDP, and the trajectory of the LDP is going down, while potentially the trajectory of the Democratic Party for the People is going up. Ishin no Kai, it's on again, off again, and it looks like their trajectory is kind of diminishing a little bit as a consequence of the negotiations and the political contributions law and the negotiations with the LDP on settling that. But there are a lot of issues that still exist for the prime minister to deal with, and they're tough issues. And they're tough issues not because politics dictates that they're tough issues on a policy level, but because we have the upper house election coming. And many people in the opposition want to see a repeat of the election in October, where the LDP just got their butts kicked and they lost the majority. Them and their coalition party in the lower house, they lost the majority by 13 votes. So they have to tie up with somebody. They were successful in tying up with Ishin no Kai, and they got Ishin no Kai's 38 votes, so they were able to pass the budget and get a couple of other things done. But this isn't a coalition. This doesn't mean that Ishin is married to the LDP, and moving forward, they will also vote their 38 so that the LDP and Komeito are able to pass legislation or to get the machinery going. In fact, the budget committee for passing the budget this year in the lower house and the upper house required another 20% more time to pass than any budget previously. And all of the budgets previously, even when the LDP wasn't sitting in the prime minister's position, only took a certain amount of time. The upper house passed what the lower house gave to them, but 20% more for passing this budget and doing it just not really sloppily, but just it was cumbersome. And I think, for people who are working in the Diet, especially LDP members, this requirement of them to have to negotiate with the opposition parties, they don't even have the muscle memory for that. That hasn't happened in 20 years. So it's a very delicate time, and to be prime minister at this period of time is a real burden for whoever's going to be there. It just happens that it's Mr. Ishiba, and I don't know if he has all of the tools and all of the personality to do that. He did look significantly better once the budget passed on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. He was on TV. He looked a lot better, not as haggard. But now the Trump tariffs came in on, they were announced on Wednesday, and they came into effect on Thursday. So he's got a lot going on. The political contributions law is still in the process of reaching some resolution. It was supposed to pass at the last day of March. It didn't, and so it's still in you could say committee. Some of the parties are beginning to modify their positions. On one side of the spectrum, you have no political contributions. We don't accept political contributions. The LDP, that's how they make their money. No contributions there. On the other side of the spectrum, which is the LDP, leave it alone. We'll increase transparency so that at least you know who is contributing and how much is contributing. But let's not put any limits on it. But I guess we'll do some limits. So they're considering that. And then in the middle, you've got the Democratic Party for the People, the Ishin no Kai, who are beginning to soften their stance. And however that is resolved means that they're cozying up a little bit to the LDP. And it turns out that the Democratic Party for the People, Mr. Tamaki's group, does seem to be a little bit more amicably aligned with the LDP. So for those members of maybe the Abe faction or for the LDP who are considering, what their options are moving forward, they want to be elected. Above and beyond everything else, they must be elected. They must continue to be a member of parliament because that's their livelihood. They could change horses, and Mr. Tamaki is offering a viable alternative to that. Less attractive is Ishin no Kai. The expo starts this month in just days. The expo starts. It runs for 6 months. Hopefully, a big boost for Osaka and for the economy there. And as a consequence of that, also it impacts the favorability of Ishin no Kai. So there's delicacy there. The ethics committee will call Mr. Seko. He has agreed to appear. He is the upper house member. He was one of the leaders of the Abe faction when the decision was made to countermand Mr. Abe's decision to stop the slush fund. Mr. Abe was assassinated, and they decided to go back to accepting these contributions and putting it in their pocket and not reporting it on the tax and not reporting it to anybody. That was blown open once Mr. Abe was assassinated. It took a couple of months, and during that period of time, the Abe faction was, you could say, leaderless, but at least it was led by 5 individuals, and those people have really suffered politically as a consequence of that decision, and they were, excluded. They were banned from political parties, from heavy political participation, and that ban ended on Wednesday. So we'll see what happens with their involvement now. And a couple of them are, well liked and very politically powerful. So it is going to be a headache for the prime minister. The double election requires a no confidence motion, or perhaps a closing of the House by the power of the prime minister. It doesn't look like either of those scenarios is going to happen, but there's a lot of time between now and the end of this diet session. But we said last week that if it's going to happen, it's going to happen rather quickly. If they're going to change horses, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. It looks like there's a coalescing around the prime minister to deal with the tariffs, and also to pass the political contributions law, the same-sex marriage law, the surname law. There are a couple of issues that are in process now, and those are on the books. They will be voted on in the diet very quickly. And of those, it's probably the ethics, the gender issue, the surname law, the campaign contributions, and trade and tariffs and the yen dollar that's going to make all of the news in the next coming weeks. There's a lot going on, and it's moving very quickly. Once again, Maya, I say it over and over again that I'm so appreciative of the audience that are interested in getting into the weeds with us on this topic, Japanese politics. It's not everybody's cup of tea. Not everybody's that interested in it. But if you are interested in it, in a little component of your work, or it's something that you're supposed to be providing value to your company or to your embassy, there are very few places where you can go and talk about Japanese politics and find out what's going on in real time. We do this once a week, so nobody else does it in the world. So we really are grateful for you participating, and also the Q&A is really on fire. This is really where all of the heat and the energy comes out. Your contributions to it too. And then finally, our synopsis, which we produce a couple of days after this briefing, and we spread it out on Substack. So if you're interested in receiving that, please, hit a button to contact Maya or myself, either on LinkedIn or Facebook or via email, and we'll put you on the email. It's free, and it goes out once a week. And with that, Maya, I'd like to kick it back over to you if you've got your mic on.
Right. Yes, I just switched it on. Yes, it's on now. Thank you, Timothy. And well, we will move into the Q&A session very brief. Well, very shortly, actually. Before that, though, once again, I want to give a word of thanks to our other sponsor, and that is Houze Inc. As they are also known, they are available. You can find them online at houze.co.jp, or you can connect them, via email at webmaster@houze.co.jp. They do custom home design and construction, and they also do commercial building construction in the Yokohama area. They are a Yokohama-based company. They can talk with you either in English or Japanese, because Hana Orisawa Howell is there, and if you're not connected with her yet, please do connect with her on LinkedIn. You will find her contact details in the description of the video on YouTube as well. And now we are going back to the Q&A session. We have accumulated a couple of questions so far, and the very first one came from Hiroaki this morning on YouTube. Hiroaki, yes, thank you very much for watching. And Hiroaki writes, Prime Minister Ishiba will make a phone call to President Trump soon. What do you think he should say in that phone call? And specifically, what possible investment plans should he talk about to create jobs in the United States?
Well, I'm surprised at this question because I figured Hideaki is already advising the prime minister.
Okay, yeah. Well,
Okay, but I think what they, this has been going on in discussions in the parliament all week, and one of the ideas is, reciprocal tariffs and this 25% and the 24% overall, and it's really going to hammer us. So we should combine with like Thailand or South Korea, our neighbors here, and we should form some strategy and retaliate. We should punish them. We should tell them this is a trade war. You can't do that unilaterally. The reason why we have these tariffs is they're based on a foundation of trade deals and concessions and all sorts of things that have happened over the span of 40 years. You just can't come in like that. I think the decision, though, was made. Don't trigger retaliation. Don't come back so strong. The prime minister said himself, the one thing this president hates is criticism of him or kind of an attack. And if you do that, you're going to kick the bear. You're going to make him angry. So let's deal with it in a more constructive way. It looks like the United States is moving globally on America first, get these tariffs back in line. And countries are already, is the right word succumbing? They're already making these deals with the United States saying, okay, we will drop our tariffs. You're right. We've been excluding U.S. products in our market and exploiting our opportunity to do business in your country. So we're going to reduce that. So it will be a bit of time, but I think the prime minister, it needs to be more than a conversation over the telephone. But once again, look at the profile of Mr. Ishiba and him going over there, him not being fluent in any stretch of the imagination in English. It's hard for you to imagine, he's not a golfer, how he would be able to, absorb that kind of a power to really sway the deal. So I think what Japan will do, and we'll know it in coming days, is they'll accommodate. They'll say we're going to invest more in the United States. We're going to reduce our tariffs. We're going to import more U.S. products, and we're going to try and even the playing field. I think that's inevitable. And so we'll see in coming days. But Hideaki, please continue to feed us information on how your discussions are going with the prime minister.
right. And if just this is a thought, that occurred to me while listening to you and while responding to Hiroki's question. But since we know that the voices within the LDP and also in the opposition parties that are calling for PM Ishiba to step down are getting stronger, gradually getting stronger. Do you think that successful negotiations with the Trump administration might help Mr. Ishiba to stay or to keep his seat? Or is there something more there?
So if you think about it from the opposition party's perspective, particularly with Mr. Noda, and he's talked about it publicly on television and in the press interviews, if we stick with Mr. Ishiba, by the time it comes around for the upper house election, we look better because he's fumbling. He's not doing a very good job. And I'd rather go into an election with him as prime minister than switching him out and maybe somebody really good coming in, Mr. Motegi or maybe Mr. Kishida or Mr. Kobayashi or somebody else, somebody with vibrancy, somebody with new ideas, somebody that moves the process forward. Let's just stay with Mr. Ishiba. He's been kind of bumbling along, and I'd prefer to have a fight with him. No confidence motion cannot survive without the Constitutional Democratic Party, and that means Mr. Noda. And Mr. Noda is a smart cookie. He is prime minister level. He knows what he's doing. He sways a lot, and he also has the largest opposition party. I think they have 138 members in their party, So no serious action against the prime minister for a no confidence motion is going to happen without him approving it. And some of the opposition parties are a little bit softer or a little bit harder. But the real problem, and I think you're touching on it, Maya, the real problem for him is a lot of these voices are coming from within the LDP. There's a faction, a right-wing faction of the LDP is really sick of this guy. And now you've got the members of the former Abe faction who are back in the leadership so they can rabble-rouse, they can exert a little bit more influence. And there are a lot of people that just, they're scratching for another fight, another 9 people competing to see who's going to be the next president of the LDP, and therefore days later, the prime minister of Japan. So there's a lot that can go on, but I think I don't know. We change all the time, but I think right now the prime minister will stay put because it benefits the opposition parties better for this upcoming upper house election, which is not the whole cake. But if the upper house loses the LDP and the Komeito coalition, then the opposition parties control the lower house. Not quite control, but at least it's not in the LDP's hands. And the upper house, at least now the upper house is dominated with a majority by the coalition between the LDP and Komeito. But if they lose that too, and if it looks like they're going to lose that, I would suspect people would smell it and they would look very carefully at the metropolitan Tokyo elections. And if the LDP gets smeared in that, there's plenty of time to have a no confidence motion, even within days of the start of the upper house election. The upper house election for the upper house is 17 days, the campaigning period. Campaigning period for the lower house is 12 days. So there's a 5-day window, even if the campaign starts, that a no confidence motion could be handled. So there's a lot of nip and tuck here.
There is indeed, but also something strange. For some reason, I think that if there is a no confidence motion against the cabinet, the current cabinet, right? So probably, or I may be wrong, of course, maybe mistaken here, but I somehow believe that the constituency of the LDP will get together then and vote for the LDP, so that probably, to support them and probably put somebody who they consider is better than PM Ishiba into the driving seat. No?
No, I acknowledge and I agree that there is a movement there. I just don't think it's enough. It's not
Right.
a resounding wave that can do that. And getting rid of the prime minister is a big deal. And if you attempt to do it and you lose, you are going to be out in the cold for quite a while before you can assert your potential leadership once again. So the winner wins a lot, but the losers also lose a lot too. So, and in fact, we reported last week about the decline in the membership of the LDP, just as a consequence of the age differential between people who are died, truly died in the wool LDP members, and that's the older people in the rural areas and in the farming and throughout the rest of Japan. But the younger ones are, considering options besides the LDP, and those options don't really include Komeito. Komeito is also losing, its force. So the opposition parties are kind of on an upswing. And so if you're looking at the trajectory, yeah, probably, if not this election, then in the next election, unless something pretty drastic happens, they need some real leadership. They need a breath of fresh air. They need something good to happen to the Japanese economy, because when it doesn't go well, of course, you blame the prime minister.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's what happens all the time. And nobody wants to be a prime minister or a leader in such times, but that's, that's what happens to some specific individuals. Okay, Timothy, we're moving on now to the next question from Manabe-san. And Manabe-san writes, the Liberal Democratic Party has merged 2 internal organizations to set up a new fiscal reform review headquarters. It is said that Mr. Onodera will head it. What does this mean?
Okay, so this is a very new development. This has happened just this last week, and thank you, Manabe-san, for pointing that out. It's a little bit early to tell, but it is the Ishiba administration attempting to go full force and to assign a leadership, a ministerial person to take charge of this, and to begin to put policies together. And they're already thinking. They just passed the budget on Monday, Maya. They're already thinking about a supplemental budget and to reduce the gasoline tax once again. And that takes not just the LDP and Komeito, but it's going to take some of the other parties too. Everybody loves that. Everybody loves reducing the gasoline tax to kind of improve the economy. But we just passed the budget, and I don't know if the budget had a supplemental budget included in it. Even you might remember before the budget was passed, the prime minister had lunch with the leader of Komeito, Mr. Saito, and over lunch he talked about, yes, I'm going to re-inject, I'm going to boost the economy, and that was, the press were outside waiting. Do you have any comment? What was your lunch like with the prime minister? What did you eat, and what did you talk about? And the leader of Komeito said, well, yeah, we were talking about injecting more energy into the economy and maybe a supplemental budget. And now everybody got upset about, the opposition parties got upset about that. We're still talking about passing this budget, and you're talking about, increasing it in some item that we haven't even discussed. What in the hell? So it really caused a huge turmoil last week. So yeah, it remains to be seen. But I think the prime minister is in a bit of a bind here. The rain is coming in.
Okay. I hope that your equipment is safe so that the computer does not get rained upon.
Yeah.
Okay. That was a kind of, right. Okay. Okay. And then, well, another question is, as you mentioned, so the Expo Osaka is starting this month. And do you think that the way, because we know that they have undersold actually tickets, so basically they still need a lot more people to buy tickets, and to say that they will be visiting the expo and so on. So do you think that the way expo goes will also have some impact on the local politics there, and also the politics, the dynamics between Ishin and the other parties here?
Yeah. So Ishin's center of gravity is Osaka. They have all of the lower house seats. They've even been able to select or help elect the governor of the next prefecture. And their base is the springboard for them to go to Tokyo metropolitan government, to expand to become a national party. It's not really a national party now. It is centered in Osaka and in the Kansai region. And that center of gravity is expected to continue. But the Osaka Expo will implicate, their leadership and their dynamism and how they were able to put all this lumber together and make a beautiful circular event space. And leaders from all over the world for 6 months are coming in, and the tourists, millions of people are expected to go there. So hotels, restaurants, the economy there is expected to boom. So booming at one level or booming at another level will impact their standing. And of course, the governor is, he's the leader of Ishin. He took over the leadership from Mr. Baba a couple of months ago as a consequence of the election. But yes, Ishin is going to milk that one and hopefully have an opportunity to milk it, because it's better than what was expected. Right now, as it stands, even observers like us know that it hasn't been that robust. A lot of the pavilions have not been built on schedule. The countries that are participating are not really that committed, but they'll, it's a World's Fair, so it's in Osaka, and yes, we'll spend the money, and it's more expensive than we thought, and it's hard to get the laborers, and so there are a lot of issues there. But yeah, if it sings, and if President Trump visited, that would be a huge boost. We don't know anything about that. Haven't heard whether Vice President Vance will appear, but I expect there will be something from the United States there. So how that is played out will definitely impact Isshin no Kai, which is why the Prime Minister is not that forward, enthusiastic about. He's not talking about it. He did mention it when he visited with Trump, but he could be a lot more robust. He could be a lot more supportive. But every time that he's supportive of the expo, it does impact the Japanese economy overall, but it influences Isshin too. So it's like a gift. Why should I give a gift to those people who are fighting against my interests?
Okay, so that's one of the issues that we'll need to watch out.
Yeah.
And continue following. Okay, thank you very much, Timothy. And with this, it looks like we have gone through all the questions and comments. I know, yes, that's a huge relief for you. But to everybody watching us, please, once again, be advised and be informed that we welcome comments, we welcome questions, and you can leave them during the week, after the briefing, or immediately before the briefing, or during the briefing. At any of the platforms we live stream on. So we live stream on YouTube and also LinkedIn, Facebook, and we do the audio in Clubhouse. Also, as Timothy mentioned, the synopsis of this briefing will be shared on Substack from May. Substack only, not LinkedIn. Until then, it will be also published on LinkedIn, but from May, it will be only on Substack. So if you haven't subscribed to the Substack account of Langley Esquire yet, please go ahead and do so. And yes, please follow the company there as well. And of course, Timothy, before we say goodbye to everybody and wish a wonderful weekend to everybody, maybe a word in conclusion.
Thank you, Maya. And once again, I so much appreciate everybody joining us every week. We've been doing it for 217 times, Maya. Not missing a beat. That's just great. And it's great. And the reason why we do it is because we have such a terrific audience. So please subscribe to Substack or to the synopsis. Once again, it's free. No ties are behind it. But also, hit like and share, because the analytics don't tell us, how many people are watching. We have a pretty good idea, but if you hit share, or if you like it, or if you post a comment, which is even better, we have a better feel for the audience and for what your needs are and what you like about what we're doing and what you don't like. And as you know, we adjust to it pretty quickly, almost on a week by week basis. We talk about issues that are important to you. We modify some of the presentations, and we enhance the distribution of the synopsis, which is far more popular actually than even this briefing. So please contribute, and please continue to stay tuned. Thank you very much for tuning in.
And just one question for you: are you going to be in Osaka next weekend, Timothy, visiting
I don't have plans to go to the opening ceremony, but there is an opening ceremony that's organized by several chambers of commerce here in Tokyo to celebrate the opening of the expo. So a lot of dignitaries who are going to Osaka will be in Tokyo before they sprint to Osaka for the opening ceremonies there. So there's a lot of fanfare that's going on, not just in Osaka, but also here in Tokyo.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much for this briefing again. And to everybody who stayed with us, watched us, and will be watching us later, thank you. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the beautiful weather. Hopefully, if you are in Japan, you enjoy also Ohanami. And we'll see you again next week. That's all for the moment. And another word of thank you to our sponsors.
Thank you. See you, Maya.